The alarm started as a low hum. At first, no one in the medical training hall paid attention. In the Galactic Academy, alarms were common. Small accidents happened every day. Alien students were still learning about different species, different bodies, and different dangers. But then the hum turned into a sharp, repeating sound. Warning, emergency, warning, emergency. The room went silent. Dozens of alien students looked up at the ceiling lights as they flashed red. The instructor, a tall being with thin silver skin and glowing eyes, stopped mid-sentence. His voice cut off instantly. "This is not a drill," he said slowly. That one sentence changed everything. A cold feeling spread across the room. The students shifted in their seats. Some of them had never seen a real emergency before. They were from safe worlds, peaceful planets where injury was rare and quickly fixed by advanced machines. But this felt different. Then the door burst open. 2 emergency drones rushed inside, carrying a stretcher. On it lay a student. His body was twisted in a way that made several students look away in fear. His skin, normally bright blue, was fading into a dull gray. A strange liquid leaked from a deep wound across his side. The smell hit the room. Sharp, bitter, dangerous. "Acid blood," someone whispered. Panic spread instantly. Several students stepped back. One of them dropped their data pad. Another covered their face. The instructor moved forward quickly, but stopped just a step away from the stretcher. His glowing eyes narrowed. "Do not touch him," he warned. The words were clear, firm, final. The injured student made a weak sound. His chest moved slowly, unevenly. He was dying, and everyone knew it. "We need a medical pod," one student shouted. "They're not available," the instructor replied. "Power failure in the sector." The room froze again. No medical pods. No advanced tools. No safe solution. Only the patient and the students. The instructor looked around the room. His voice lowered. "This is now a live test," he said. "Who will act?" No one moved. Not a single student stepped forward. They all knew the risks. Acid blood could burn skin. Unknown biology could spread infection. One wrong move could make things worse or kill the patient faster. Fear held them in place. Seconds passed. The injured student's breathing became weaker. A soft, choking sound came from his throat. Still no one moved. Then, a chair scraped against the floor. Every head turned. At the back of the room, a human stood up. He was not the tallest, not the strongest. Compared to many alien species, he looked almost fragile, but his face was calm. Too calm. His name was Daniel, and he walked forward without hesitation. "Stop," the instructor said sharply. Daniel did not stop. "You do not understand his biology," the instructor warned. Daniel finally spoke. "If I do nothing, he dies." His voice was simple. No fear. No doubt. The room went quiet again. Daniel stepped closer to the stretcher. The smell of acid grew stronger. It burned the air. A few students moved even further back. But Daniel leaned in. He studied the wound for only a second. Then he acted. He removed his outer jacket and quickly wrapped it around his hands. It was not perfect protection, but it was something. Gasps filled the room. "He's going to touch it," someone whispered in horror. Daniel pressed the fabric gently against the wound. The reaction was instant. A faint sizzling sound. Smoke rose from the cloth. The acid was eating through it. Several students turned away, unable to watch. "He is making it worse," one shouted. But Daniel didn't stop. "Pressure," he muttered quietly. "Stop the bleeding first." He adjusted his grip, pressing harder. The injured student let out a weak cry, but then his body stopped shaking as much. The bleeding slowed. The room fell silent. Daniel looked around quickly. His eyes moved from one object to another, searching. "Give me something flexible," he said. No one responded. They were too shocked to move. Daniel didn't wait. He grabbed a piece of training equipment, a soft tube used for simulation exercises. He cut it open with a small tool from his belt. Then he used it to create a tight band around the injured area. A crude bandage, primitive, but effective. The sizzling sound became quieter. The acid flow slowed even more. The student's breathing steadied. A whisper spread across the room. "It's working." The instructor stepped closer now, his glowing eyes focused. Daniel placed his hand near the student's neck, checking for a pulse. "There," he said. "Still alive." Relief mixed with disbelief filled the air. "How did you know?" a student asked. Daniel didn't look up. "Basic first aid," he replied. "Basic?" Another repeated, confused. "This is not basic," the instructor said slowly. This is reckless. Daniel finally looked at him. No, he said. Reckless is doing nothing. The words hit the room like a shockwave. No one spoke. For a moment, even the instructor had no reply. The injured student made another sound. Stronger this time. His chest rose and fell more evenly. Color slowly began to return to his skin. He was stabilizing. Daniel leaned back slightly, finally taking a breath. The cloth around his hands was damaged. Small holes burned through it. His skin underneath was red, slightly burned, but he ignored it. One of the alien students stepped forward carefully. You are injured, they said. Daniel glanced at his hands. It's fine, he replied. Fine. The word echoed in their minds. How could that be fine? The instructor looked at Daniel for a long moment. Then he spoke. You acted without full knowledge, without proper tools, without safety. Daniel nodded. Yes. And yet, the patient lives. Daniel said nothing. The instructor turned to the class. Observe carefully, he said. This is a human method. The words carried weight. Human method. The students looked at Daniel differently now, not with fear alone, but with something new. Confusion, curiosity, maybe even respect. Daniel stood quietly beside the stretcher. He watched the injured student breathe. Slow, steady, alive. The emergency drones moved closer again, scanning the patient. Stabilization confirmed. One of them announced. A soft wave of relief passed through the room. It was over, or so they thought. But then the lights flickered again. The alarm returned. Louder this time. Warning. Multiple system failures. Warning. The instructor's expression changed instantly. This is not isolated, he said. A screen on the wall activated. It showed different parts of the academy. Dark corridors. Broken systems. And then, another injured student appeared on the screen. This one was worse. Much worse. The room went cold. The instructor turned slowly toward Daniel. For a moment, no one spoke. Then he said, It seems your methods will be needed again. All eyes moved back to the human. Daniel looked at the screen, then at his burned hands, then back at the patient in front of him. He took a slow breath and stepped forward again. The alarm did not stop this time. It grew louder, sharper, more urgent. The red lights flashed faster, turning the calm training hall into something chaotic, unstable. All eyes were locked on the screen. The second injured student was lying in a dark corridor. His body was shaking violently. A strange mist filled the air around him, thin, green, and clearly toxic. One of the alien students stepped back in fear. That gas, it is lethal, he said. Another added, even with protection, exposure is dangerous. The instructor's voice was tight now. That corridor has lost atmospheric control. The systems are down. Silence. No one needed to explain what that meant. No safe entry. No rescue team. No time. The student on the screen suddenly stopped moving for a second, then jerked again, gasping for air. He will not last long, the instructor said. His glowing eyes slowly turned toward Daniel. The message was clear. Again, it was up to him. The room felt heavier now. The first rescue had shocked him. But this was different. This was not just injury. This was environment, poison, unknown biology. This was death waiting in the air. Daniel stared at the screen. His face was still calm, but his eyes were focused, thinking fast. How long has he been there? Daniel asked. Unknown, the instructor replied. Signal was weak until now. Daniel nodded once. Then he turned and started walking. Where are you going? A student asked, confused. To him. Daniel answered simply. Several voices rose at once. That is suicide. You cannot survive that gas. You will die before you reach him. Daniel stopped at the doorway. He looked back for a brief moment. If I do nothing, he said quietly, he dies. The same words again. But this time they felt heavier. No one tried to stop him again. The instructor stepped forward and handed Daniel a small device. A basic filter mask, he said. It is not designed to that level of toxin, but it may delay exposure. Daniel took it. Thanks. He put it on quickly, adjusting it over his face. It looked simple, weak compared to advanced alien gear, but it was something. Without another word, Daniel stepped out into the corridor. The door closed behind him. Inside the room, the students rushed to the screen. They watched. They had to. The corridor on the screen was dark. Emergency lights flickered weakly. Shadows moved across the walls. And the gas, it was everywhere. A thin green fog, slowly moving like it was alive. Daniel appeared at the edge of the screen. He paused for just a second. Then he stepped into the gas. Several students gasped. "He is insane," one whispered. Daniel moved carefully but quickly. His steps were steady, controlled. The mask covered his face, but his eyes were clear, focused. He reached the injured student. Up close, the damage was worse. The alien's skin was blistering. His breathing was broken, fast and shallow. The gas had already entered his system. Daniel knelt beside him. "Hey," he said, his voice slightly muffled by the mask. "Stay with me?" The student did not respond. Daniel looked around quickly. No tools, no equipment, nothing useful. Only the environment, only what he could use. His eyes landed on a broken panel on the wall. Wires hung loose. A small emergency pipe was leaking clear liquid. Daniel moved fast. He pulled the pipe free, letting the liquid flow stronger. "What is he doing?" one student asked inside the room. The instructor watched closely. Daniel soaked part of his damaged jacket in the liquid. Then he brought it back to the injured student. He covered the alien's mouth area with the wet cloth. "Filter, basic filter," Daniel muttered. The idea was simple. Wet cloth could block some particles. Not perfect, but better than nothing. The alien's breathing slowed slightly. Not normal, but less chaotic. "It should not work," one student said, confused. "But it is," another replied. Daniel looked at the alien's chest. Still struggling. Still not enough. He needed more. His eyes moved again. Thinking. Searching. Then he made a decision. A risky one. He removed his own mask. The entire room froze. "No," someone whispered. Daniel took a quick breath, then held it. He moved fast. He placed his mask over the injured student's face instead. Now the alien had better protection, better air, a better chance. But Daniel, he had nothing. Inside the control room, panic exploded. "He will die. His lungs cannot handle that. This is beyond reckless." But Daniel did not hesitate. He pressed his hand against the alien's chest. "Breathe," he said firmly. "Come on, breathe." Seconds passed. Long. Painful. Daniel's face tightened slightly. The gas was already affecting him. His eyes watered. His movement slowed just a little. But he stayed, focused, waiting. Then, the alien took a deeper breath. Then another, more stable, more controlled. "It is working," the instructor said quietly. Disbelief filled the room again. Daniel quickly grabbed the alien's arm. "We're moving," he said. He pulled him up slowly. The alien was weak, barely able to stand. So Daniel did what he had to do. He lifted him, carried him, step by step, back toward the door. The gas moved around them. Silent, deadly. Daniel's steps became heavier, his breathing shorter. But he did not stop. Inside the room, no one spoke now. They just watched. Every second felt longer. Every step felt impossible. Then finally, Daniel reached the door. It opened. Clean air rushed in. He stumbled inside, carrying the injured student. The moment he crossed the line, the drones rushed forward. They took the alien from his arms. "Patient critical but alive," one drone announced. "Alive." Again. But Daniel, he dropped to one knee, coughing. Hard. The gas had done its work. The instructor moved quickly to him. "Medical support," he called. The student stood frozen. They did not know what to feel anymore. Fear, shock, respect, all mixed together. Daniel removed what was left of the mask. His face was pale, his breathing rough, but he was still conscious. "I'm fine," he said between breaths. No one believed that word anymore. Fine. It meant something different for humans. The instructor looked at him closely. "You risked your life," he said. Daniel gave a weak smile. He would have died. The instructor did not reply immediately. He looked at the two rescued students. Both alive, both saved without advanced technology. Only actions, only decisions, only human instinct. The room felt different now. The students looked at Daniel like he was something else. Not just a classmate, not just a student. Something dangerous. Something unbelievable. One of them spoke softly. "Why?" Daniel looked at him. "Why what? Why would you do that for someone you don't even know?" Daniel thought for a moment. Then he answered simply. "Because I can." Silence followed. No one had an answer to that. The alarm slowly faded. The lights returned to normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. The instructor turned to class. His voice was calm again, but deeper now. "Today you have witnessed something important." He paused, then said, "This is why humans are called Deathworlders. All eyes moved back to Daniel. He was sitting now, recovering slowly. Just another student. But not really. Not anymore. And deep down, every alien in that room understood one thing now. Humans did not wait for safety. They created it, even if it meant walking into death. The alarms were gone, but the silence that followed felt heavier than any warning sound. No one in the medical hall moved. No one spoke. All eyes were still on Daniel. He sat on the floor, his back against the wall, breathing slowly. Each breath was controlled, but not easy. The effect of the toxic gas had not fully left his body. A faint cough escaped him. Still, he stayed calm. The two rescued students were now surrounded by medical drones. Soft lights scanned their bodies. Data flowed across the main screen. Both were alive. That fact alone was enough to shake the entire class. The instructor stood in the center of the room, watching everything. His glowing eyes moved from the drones to the students, and finally back to Daniel. "This lesson is not over," he said. His voice was steady, but there was something new in it. Respect. The students shifted slightly, uncertain. "Another lesson? After all this?" The instructor raised his hand, and the main screen changed. A new location appeared, deeper inside the academy. Darker, colder, and worse. The image showed a damaged lab section. Sparks fell from broken panels. A section of the ceiling had collapsed. Smoke filled parts of the room. And in the middle of it, 3 figures. All injured, all unmoving. A wave of fear passed through class. "That area," one student whispered, "it was used for mixed species experiments." Another added, "Different biology, different risks." The instructor nodded. "Yes," he said. "And now, multiple critical patients." The room grew tense again. "But this time," the instructor continued, "it will not be a single act." He turned toward the students. "It will be a choice." No one fully understood what he meant until he said the next words. "You will assist him." Every head snapped toward Daniel, then back to the instructor. Shock, fear, confusion. "You cannot be serious," one student said. "We are not trained for this," another added. "We could die." The instructor did not react. He simply said, "Exactly." Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. "You have seen what one human can do," the instructor continued. "Now you will learn what happens when others choose to act as well." No one spoke. No one stepped forward. The fear was still there. Strong. Real. Daniel slowly pushed himself up from the floor. His movements were slower now, but steady. He looked at the screen. 3 injured. Different species. Unknown conditions. High risk. He took a breath. Then he turned to the class. "I can't do this alone," he said. His voice was not loud, but it carried across the room. "I'll need help." That made it worse. Now it wasn't just about watching. Now it was about choosing. One student stepped back. Another looked down at their hands. Someone whispered, "This is madness." Daniel nodded slightly. "Yeah," he said. "It is." He didn't argue. Didn't try to convince them with big words. He just turned and started walking toward the door again. Alone, just like before. He reached the doorway, then stopped. Not because someone called him, but because he heard something else. Footsteps. Slow. Careful. He turned. One of the alien students stepped forward. Small. Nervous. But moving. I will assist," the student said quietly. All eyes turned to them. Another student hesitated, then took a step forward too. "And I will try." A third one looked at the screen, then at Daniel. Fear was still in their eyes. But something else had appeared too. Determination. "I do not understand your methods," they said, "but I saw the results." Daniel gave a small nod. "That's enough." The instructor watched silently. More students began to move. Not all, but some. Enough. Daniel looked at the small group now standing with him. "This is going to be dangerous," he said. They nodded. "You might get hurt." Another nod. "You might panic." One of them swallowed hard, but stayed. Daniel took a breath. "Okay," he said. "Then let's go." The group moved out together. Into the corridor. Into the unknown. The damaged lab was worse up close. The door barely opened. Smoke drifted out slowly. The air smelled burnt. Unstable. Daniel raised his hand. "Stay close," he said. "Watch everything." The students followed. Their movements were careful. Every sound made them flinch. Inside the lab, the scene was chaos. Broken equipment, fallen structures, flickering lights, and the 3 injured bodies. Daniel moved to the first one, a tall, armored species. Their outer shell was cracked. A deep fracture ran across their chest. Breathing? One student asked. Daniel checked quickly. Slow but there. He looked at the others. We stabilize first. No panic. The students nodded, trying to stay focused. Support the chest, Daniel said. One of them hesitated, then carefully placed their hands where Daniel showed. The alien winced, but stayed alive. Good, Daniel said. Hold it steady. He moved to the second patient. This one was smaller, covered in thin, sensitive skin. Burn marks across their body. The student beside Daniel froze. I do not know how to touch the species. Daniel didn't look up. Then don't think about species, he said. Think about injury. The student blinked, confused. Burns need protection, Daniel continued. Use anything clean. The student looked around, then grabbed a soft cloth from the floor. Carefully, slowly, they covered the burned areas. The patient's breathing eased slightly. It worked, the student whispered. Daniel nodded. Keep going. Then, a loud crack echoed through the lab. The ceiling shifted. Dust fell. Everyone froze. That structure is unstable, one student shouted. Daniel looked up, then at the third patient. Still unmoving, trapped under debris. Time was running out. I'll get them, Daniel said. No, one student replied. That area could collapse. Daniel stepped forward anyway. I know. He moved quickly, reaching the third patient. Their body was pinned, heavy debris across their lower half. Daniel tried to lift it. It didn't move. Too heavy. He clenched his jaw. Tried again. Still nothing. Behind him, the students watched, fear rising again. We cannot lift that, one said. Daniel looked back at them. Then we do it together. Silence. Then, one of them stepped forward. Then another, and another. Slowly they surrounded the debris. On 3, Daniel said. They nodded. 1, 2, 3. They pushed. The debris shifted slightly. Not enough. Again. They pushed harder. The structure creaked above them. Dust fell faster. Again. With a final effort, the debris moved. Just enough. Daniel pulled the patient free. Move, he shouted. They all backed away quickly. Seconds later, the ceiling partially collapsed where they had stood. The sound echoed through the lab. Then silence. Heavy. Real. They had been seconds away from disaster. Everyone stood still, breathing hard, looking at each other, then at Daniel, then at the 3 patients. All alive, all saved. No one spoke, because no one had words. Daniel exhaled slowly. Good job, he said. Simple, but it meant everything. The students looked at their hands, at the patients, at the destroyed lab around them. Something had changed. They were still afraid, but now they knew they could act. They could do something. They were not helpless anymore. In the distance, emergency drones finally arrived. Too late to save, but just in time to witness. Multiple patients stabilized. One drone announced. Daniel sat down again, tired, exhausted, but calm. The students stood around him. Different now. Stronger. The instructor's voice came through the comm system. You have crossed the line, he said. The students looked up, confused. Between fear and action. Silence followed. Then one student spoke softly. We understand now. Another added. Not fully, but enough. Daniel gave a small, tired smile. That's how it starts. Far above them, in the quiet control room, the instructor watched. And for the first time, he did not see just students. He saw survivors. The academy was quiet again. Too quiet. After the collapse of the lab and the successful rescue, all emergency systems had stabilized. Lights were normal. Air was clean. No alarms remained. But nothing felt normal. The students who had gone into the lab now stood in a separate recovery room. Their bodies were tired. Their hands were shaking slightly, not from injury, but from what they had experienced. Daniel was sitting apart from them. He was bandaging a small burn on his arm. Slowly, silently. No drama. No fear. Just work. A few alien students kept looking at him. Not directly. Quick glances. Like they were trying to understand something they had never seen before. The instructor entered the room. The door closed behind him with a soft sound. Everyone straightened slightly. Even Daniel looked up. The instructor stood in front of them for a long moment without speaking. Then he said, "You all survived." A pause. "That is not what concerns me." Silence. He turned toward the group. What concerns me is why you survived. No one answered. The room felt tight again, heavy in a different way. The instructor walked slowly across the room. You face poison gas, he said. Structural collapse. Multiple species injuries. Unknown biology. And yet, he stopped. You acted. His glowing eyes turned toward Daniel. Because of him. Daniel didn't react. He just finished wrapping his bandage. The instructor continued. But I need you to understand something. His voice lowered slightly. This was not training anymore. A few students swallowed. This was instinct under pressure. He turned toward the group. An instinct can be dangerous. One student spoke carefully, but it saved lives. The instructor nodded once. Yes. A pause. Both things can be true. Silence returned. The instructor walked closer to Daniel. Human, he said. Daniel looked up. The room became still. Even the air felt like it was waiting. You were exposed to lethal conditions twice today, the instructor said. You ignored direct personal safety. You transferred protective equipment to others. You led untrained students into unstable zones. He paused. And you are still standing. Daniel replied simply, yes. That one word felt strange in the room. Too simple. Too calm. The instructor studied him carefully. This is not normal behavior, he said. Daniel shrugged slightly. It is when someone is dying. A few students exchanged looks. The instructor raised a hand slightly. On your world, this is normal? Daniel thought for a moment, then answered, it is not normal. It is necessary. That answer changed the tone of the room. The instructor turned to the others. You see, he said, this is the difference. He walked a few steps. Your species are trained to avoid risk, to calculate survival, to minimize damage. He stopped. Humans do not wait for perfect conditions. He turned back. They act inside imperfect ones. A silence followed. One student finally spoke. But that is dangerous. The instructor nodded. Yes. Then looked at Daniel. And yet effective. Daniel didn't look proud. He just said, if you wait too long, you lose people. That sentence hung in the air. No one replied. Because no one could argue with what they had seen. The instructor activated the wall screen again. This time it showed Earth. A simple rotating image. Blue oceans. Green land. Cloud systems moving slowly. Human homeworld, he said. The alien students watched carefully. This planet is classified as a class. 12 Death World. A few students whispered among themselves. Death World. The instructor continued. Extreme gravity variation. Atmospheric hazards. Biological threats in every environment. Natural disasters that would wipe out most species within cycles. The screen zoomed into storms. Earthquakes. Volcanoes. Floods. And yet, he said, a species evolved there. He turned toward Daniel. Not just survived, but learned to protect each other inside it. The room was silent. The students now looked at Earth differently. Not beautiful, not peaceful, but harsh, relentless. One student spoke softly. How do they live like that? Daniel answered without hesitation. We don't think about surviving every moment, he said. We think about the next moment. That confused some of them. Daniel continued. If someone is injured, you act. If someone is drowning, you pull them out. If something collapses, you move people first. He looked at them. Later you think. The instructor nodded slowly. That is the core difference. He paused. And it is why humans are both feared and needed. That word changed the atmosphere again. Needed. The students looked at each other. The instructor walked toward Daniel again. Today, he said, you did not behave like a student. Daniel looked up slightly. You behaved like a field medic in a war zone. The room became quiet again. A few students looked down at their hands. Others at the floor. One spoke quietly. I was afraid all the time. Another added, I almost did nothing. The instructor nodded. And yet you still moved. He turned slightly. Because you followed him. All eyes returned to Daniel. Daniel finally looked uncomfortable. Don't follow me, he said. The room paused. He continued. Learn. That was all. No speeches. No pride. Just instruction. The instructor smiled slightly. Interesting, he said. Then his tone became serious again. This academy will be changing its curriculum. The students looked up. From passive observation, he continued, to active response training. A ripple went through the group. Based on what you have experienced today. He looked at Daniel. Based on human methods. Daniel shook his head slightly. That's not a method, he said. The instructor raised an eyebrow. What is it then? Daniel thought for a moment, then answered, It is just what you do when you care. That sentence landed deeper than anything else that day. The room stayed silent for a long time. Finally, the instructor spoke. You may return to your quarters. The students began to move slowly, but they were different now. They did not walk like before. They walked like they had seen something real, something that could not be unseen. As they left, one by one, many of them glanced at Daniel, some with respect, some with confusion, some with something closer to understanding. When the room was finally empty except for Daniel and the instructor, the silence changed again. The instructor spoke quietly. You realize what you have done? Daniel looked at him. I help people. The instructor shook his head. No. A pause. You changed how this academy will train future generations. Daniel didn't respond immediately, then said, I just didn't want them to die. The instructor studied him carefully, then spoke softly. On many worlds, that statement is considered weakness. Daniel looked back at him. On Earth, he said, it is just normal. A long silence followed. The instructor finally turned toward the door. Before leaving, he said one final line. Then perhaps your normal is what we lack. The door closed. Daniel remained alone in the room. For the first time that day, it was quiet. Not emergency quiet. Not tension quiet. Just stillness. He looked down at his hands. Bandaged. Tired. Human. And somewhere far beyond the academy walls, across the galaxy, the first real understanding of humanity had begun to spread. Not as a weapon. Not as fear. But as something far more dangerous. Something simple. Action.